the podcast where we transform adversity into triumph and illuminate the extraordinary potential within all of us. I'm your host, Thomas Scaria, a resilience coach, an ultra marathoner, and a firm believer in your next most powerful chapter. This podcast is a companion to my upcoming book, Resilience plus Rise 26.2 Transformative Miles to Unleash Your Marathon of Life Mindset, coming spring 2025, maybe in a few months or sooner. Here, we amplify stories of hope, perseverance, and success to inspire your journey. Today, the guest I have takes a different twist on resilience, a word which we coin saying that people fall down and get up. But today, who are we really fighting? The children that's there in the education system. There is a fight going on. Heard about something called as AI? Well, that's looming faster than you can understand. Welcome to Jessica Maddry. She is an tech, educational technology consultant, a science educator with over 20 years of experience. She is passionate about transforming education into innovative solutions. But what got my attention was her mission to bridge the gap between technology and education. Yeah, we are not talking about just computers. We are talking about the current technology which is around in your homes and every facet of your life, the AI which is coming in. She wants to create an inclusive and engaging learning experiences that prepares the students for the challenges of 21st century. So, without taking much of your time, Jessica, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you so much for having me.
So, the question which comes up is that I would love to get into that journey. Is that how did you get to the current stage that you are in? And for me, more than that, is that what has been unnerving for you that you believe that this has to be more louder than what the education or the school system is currently doing?
I think it's only fair to sort of rewind myself back to how this all got started. Now, if you had asked me as a child, I would have had no idea that it kind of rooted here, but here it is. A story probably I've only shared with people like my children. Years ago, as an elementary student, um, I had a friend group. Now, mind you, I grew up in the 80s and 90s in the deep South. So my school experience was probably a bit different in that way as it sits now. I had a friend group and we had a new student that came to school and she had moved from a foreign country. And I invited her at the prompting of another friend to join us for this book club. Well, it was a hoax on her. And I really probably have never felt more horrible about a decision in my life. And that is one of my first memories of really feeling pretty strong about how people need to be treated equally. And actually, when that happened, I had my mom drive me to her house so I could apologize. She didn't forgive me. That's fair. I don't even think I was really expecting it at the time, but it was the first time that I felt like, oh, even I am capable of doing something that is really unkind. And it was the first time I realized I never ever wanted to be that person again. So I was very fortunate that I learned this early when I was young. Fast forward, and well, I also had the same thing happen to me by the same friend group much later in high school. which kind of has lent to where I am with my feelings in schools. Um, I wouldn't say that I had a great experience in school. And what's funny is for the educators who are listening, every new school you start, every new school year, you sit in these professional developments and they ask you a question. And it's the same one on repeat year after year. And they say, who was the most inspirational teacher you ever had? Because as an educator, I'm supposed to have a really good answer to that, right? I did not have the answer that probably most people were searching for. I thought inspiration, like in a good way, because I didn't really have those. I had it at home. My mom is a long-term educator. My dad started his career in teaching. So I had the support at home, but I did not at school. In fact, I had a pretty awful high school experience. I didn't have great relationships with teachers. I always found that question very difficult to answer and would sit in the cafeteria usually like, oh, I don't know, maybe I should make someone up. Maybe I should just dream up this magical teacher that made this great big difference. But the truth was, I really didn't have one outside of my own home life. And I also recognized somewhere along the way that that would not be the answer that every person would be able to give. If it wasn't at school, they wouldn't be able to necessarily say that there was, someone truly inspirational at home when it came to education. It's just not everybody's story. So that is kind of where this maybe all really began for me having big feelings about how kids' school experience goes. I barely graduated high school, which most people would say is a surprise. It was not the work that was a problem. My desire to do it was kind of an issue.
Yeah.
I was a bit rebellious. And I just didn't want to do particular things. Um, I left high school thinking probably I'm not a great student. I had bad experiences with teachers. I really didn't have like misbehavior problems at school. It wasn't that the work I did was done poorly. It was just that I didn't really want to do any of it. And as an adult, then now raising 3 children, I wondered kind of how it got to that point. And then, of course, it came as a shock to everybody that I end up as a school teacher, seeing as I didn't have a great experience in school myself.
That actually comes to a point wherein I say our purpose usually comes out from our deepest of pains.
It is definitely rooted there. But you know what? As a kid, I don't think I even knew that was. We had in Louisiana, we had a system. Schools are designated by zones. And when I was in elementary school, they broke up and moved around these zones. It was a very different school experience for me. But I was a kid. I mean, I just went where I was told. Like the not doing what you're told came later in high school. Yeah. But it is a huge, like it is a almost like a feeling in my soul, my gut, this need to make sure that kids have a really positive school experience. And I'll tell you that part of that is really kind of rooted in, I mean, it sounds very dramatic. And education saved my life, but it actually kind of did.
Okay.
You know, when you learn something new, nobody can take it from you. That becomes yours. And then there is a thing that happens where later in a discussion with someone else, you feel empowered because you know that you know these things. And that was something I thought about a lot as a school teacher. And actually, I think that not having a great experience in school myself probably made me better at my job,
Okay.
because I would have a child that would be upset, and I would just go to my mind like, did they sleep? Are they hungry? Like, what would be going on that would make this kid very unhappy at this moment? Because I knew for myself that usually there were, underlying causes of being unhappy at school. For me, it wasn't necessarily anything at home, but my social life was not great. I did never really feel like I fit in. I also grew up going to school in the late 80s and 90s, and we didn't talk about that then. We just, I don't know, you're supposed to just, pick it
Yeah.
up and move on. And so, of course, like that's what I did. That was the expectation. So that's kind of where my interest in education started. But my bachelor's degree was actually in criminal justice. And I
Beautiful.
left my bachelor's degree thinking, oh, I'm going to be an advocate, right? Uh, and somehow I ended up in a classroom. I had
Okay.
my first child. It made sense in my life. I ended up in education, and then I fell in love with it, because I felt like I could be the teacher that nobody had given me. And that became very important to me.
Okay. So, from a teacher to a
Mm,
technologist
yeah.
or a person who is passionate about technology, and you are seeing it in the classrooms or even
Mm,
among your children about how technology is creating a persona that they start interacting it with it the same way they interact with their siblings or their friends or their parents. It's slowly taking on that, whether we're talking about, yeah, now everybody has got a name also, whether we are talking about Gemini or Gemini chat or whatever it is, we are giving names to all these particular elements also. So tell me more about it, that
How
what's
did I
your,
end up there?
not only end up, but what are your concerns? That would be more of a question that we are talking about at this point of time, because we got to realize that it is in the nascent stage, and that's when it is slowly coming out, and we don't realize it is something small which is coming out, and we feel it's cute and we are going to feed it, and we do not know maybe the monster that is lurking,
Mm,
or maybe it is a blessing that's lurking. We are totally unaware. What's your take on that?
you know, uh, it's funny because this time it is very clear to me, having gone through now and sort of gotten my emerging technologist certifications, then getting masters in educational technology. This is the first time I've ever really seen so clearly that how we decide to engage with this bulk of artificial intelligence, emerging technologies, however you want to refer to it, the way that we engage with it is actually going to dictate how it's used. And for our kids, um, that is both really good and really bad, because we're really going to have to take a grip on how younger people are interacting. And you mentioned earlier that, oh, everything has a name. And I just thought in my mind when you said it, like, of course it does. This is all by design, right? We've created this technology that uses very human like terms. We talk about neural networks, or we talk about training or feeding or learning, or any one of these words that we associate with people. And it does somewhat in the psychology of things shape the way we begin to think and engage with something. When we're engaging, when students are engaging, when young people are engaging with large language models, it's meant to sound like a person. It is still not a person. And that is a difficulty for younger people to really understand. And we have laws all over the place. We have a whole juvenile justice system that recognizes that younger brains cannot see around the corners the same way that adults can. And so it's perplexing to me, actually, that we don't have some of the guardrails in place for younger people. Because this debate of to fully adopt AI in education or to ban it entirely is not an effective, this will not be an efficient approach. It's not going to go anywhere. This is like brings back to the days of computers, calculators. Like, there are some things it's going to stick.
True.
So it's important that we let students see, let young people see. I have these conversations with even my youngest, who's only 10. But what information you're giving all of your devices at this point, it is captured, and we're creating these digital profiles of ourselves starting very, very young now. When I researched my youngest, 10 years old again, she has 14 open accounts that are coming from school. This is
You
14,
mentioned 14.
1 4, 14 that I have found. That is 14 different places capturing things that she's doing well, not doing well. So I think we really need to start having some conversations about how this makes sense. And when my child then leaves, which you probably wouldn't have had any reason to hear about it, but like Power School had a really large data breach. That means potentially social security numbers, addresses, loads of personal information, me, where they each live, their date of birth, probably a photo, is all captured and lost in what we need to collect on students in order for them to have these accounts. So I think it's worthy of taking a pause so that every little piece of this that we're putting in place is very intentional. Does it need to be captured? Sure. But does everyone need it?
Actually, if I could just pause over here, is there are two elements that came up to my mind. Number one is about cybersecurity. I don't know if you have seen that particular news. The people who are hit very badly by the cybersecurity are the young people, because they feel that they have taken on the world. They don't need to really look into things very carefully, and they just jump into it, think that everything looks
Uh-huh.
safe, it looks fancy, it looks very colorful, and they jump into it without a second thoughts, and there where the data breaches come in. The second one is that when you talk about handrails, guardrails, which I want to talk further on, is that just few months back there was the Paris summit about AI and
Mm,
ethics. Now there itself, wherein there were convergence of multiple personalities high up in the food chain, they had an opportunity to say that this is what the ethics is about. I forget about the young kids. They did not even put out proposed ethics for any of the industries which is taking place.
mhm,
I mean, no disrespect to the big companies, but people with the most money, they had their say and they said this is the way it can continue. Moving the pivot towards, because you are in education
mhm.
and you see young children, you mentioned about accounts, and also there are elements wherein children, they have got their own friends now. AI, like the other day also I've seen is that somebody was saying that now you got a friend that you can talk to. There are,
Yes.
okay, and not only that. In fact, I had a talk with one gentleman who's coming out with some amazing concept about having AI as a friend, but to talk when you're lonely or alone, and some to give that, but it's more from the mindfulness point of view. But of course, that can go further on by people who want to. But let's for refocus about the young students.
Mm.
What are your suggestions, or what are the guardrails that they for parents that they could think about?
You
Or
know, I
sorry, before that, sorry, our question is that have you come across these wonderful AI friends?
yes.
Okay, let's start with that.
You know what? Here it's really because it's all kind of connected. Um, there are potentials for really good companions, if you will. Um, but then we're kind of back to the guardrails conversation. So there is a lack of transparency, and sometimes, depending upon the company, a lack of guardrails. And some of this is, what we refer to as like black box. It's a bit unpredictable. Now, you can manipulate. One of the best ways I've begun to talk to my own children about this, and I would suggest other parents give it a shot as well. If you treat AI as a human, we know that people don't tell the truth all the time. We know that people can be manipulated. We know that they can misunderstand things. We know that they can get confused. We also know that when we're clear, they can be very helpful. We know that we can find great friends. And this is all very much the same thing. Every interaction that a person, young, old, teen, tween, is having with these language models, for example, it's shaping their conversations for later. In the same way that we open Google and Google is tracking things like shopping habits, our interests, what we spend time on, it's going to perpetuate the same thing. And so I actually listened to my 10-year-old tell her 14-year-old brother the other day. He's like, this one video just keeps coming. And she's like, that's because you're looking at it too long. It's like, I don't know what the world's coming to now. when when kids are having to think ahead of time, like, oh, if I stay on this advertisement too long, it's going to continue to give me these things. So I think it's really important that there is human oversight at every step of this. I'm not a fan of avoiding anything because it's already out there. Like the bell has rung. It's not going anywhere. So what we need to do is help them understand that what finding their own moral compass in this scenario is going to be super helpful. If it feels off, it probably is. Um, Things like AI generated video have gotten incredibly good.
Hmm.
Man, I remember seeing them at the first, like, oh, that's really, wow, that was weird. And now you see it and it's like, oh, I didn't even know that that was not real video. And this has been really super fast that it's made this improvement.
Of course. This reminds me, in fact, we had talked about there's this friend of mine, Jess Toft, and she has created an AI with the VR uh, Jess, wherein she helps students to understand what is empathy, and it's a more of a friendly way of using the AI interaction through virtual reality about how the challenges that they're facing. But when we talk about parents, now parents, few of the parents may be grappling with how
Uh,
can I approach a student? Because once they have a phone in their hand, they are they are lost in another universe. But we are not talking about policing, but how can they get across that go? Now you said the bell has already rung, fantastic. But how do they handle or get a grip? or create a guardrail for the children to be more mindful about the unknowns?
I think it's going to be a time that open conversation is really important. As parents, I think we always assume we're supposed to have the right answers. And the truth is, we're learning this side by side right now. So, open conversation is going to bring kind of that vulnerability, A, for the parent to say, like, oh, I don't really know exactly how this is all going. If I told you, so I keep a profile that keeps up with news, AI specifically. Currently, it is like a battering of news. It is coming out so fast and so quickly, being thrown at people of all ages, that it would be nearly impossible to say, oh, go to this one safe place or do this one specific thing. So it's really going to come to potentially a joint exploration. And the way I think of, because there is a huge conversation about cheating in the education world when it comes to AI. But if we frame the narrative differently, because this is a very unique period of time, we have actually, internet did this for a while and still kind of has continued to do this, but we have this period of time where everybody's fumbling around like, we don't know what rules we're going to put in place. We're not 100% sure. It's a little snippet of time where we can take control of what that narrative is. And if young people are presented with AI in these very limited capacities, then that will be all it's ever going to be for anyone. And that's not helpful. I mean, if we met the smartest person on the planet, we would not be asking them to write us papers. If we had access to filter through 700 books at a single time to come up with an answer to something, we wouldn't ask the person who's read the 700 books, like, just give me an answer. You would want some explanation. And I think that that's the narrative that parents and educators can have with kids is, if you wanted to know more, what are the questions that you would ask? Also, large language models are very literal in a lot of ways.
True. Wow, that's fantastic. And that's a huge learning. So, here, Jessica, I would want to ask, just being mindful of the time, are there any programs or any sessions that you are having that could help, or something in your website or in your teachings that people could glean or learn a little more? I mean, it's not that, as you mentioned, the universe is out over there. All you need to do is just type it out. But then, for the people, for the listeners, for the parents who are at this point of time, or the teachers, educators, is there anything that you are working on at this point of time?
Yes, actually, for educators, am about nearing 2 years deep in research, and we'll have something published here hopefully shortly. So keep an eye out for that.
Okay.
If I were a parent and wanted one takeaway from today, it would be open. It doesn't cost you anything. Open a chat GPT or Gemini or Claude, whatever you want, whichever platform. I'd say chat GPT is probably a quick go-to because it's what everybody mentions. And just ask a question. Just ask a question. You could make it very simple. I am a parent of a child that is this age. I would like to introduce them to large language models without limiting or without offering too much of the personal information. What would you suggest? You would be very surprised at some of the things that can be come up with in just those simple scenarios.
Wonderful.
A lot of it is just let's take the fear out of actually beginning to put our type in the chat GPT and give it a go to see what it's about. Just go by yourself, go ask a question, and then go from there.
Fantastic. That's such an amazing learning, especially the last one. I believe. So, guys, if y'all are listening to that, check it out. Try it out. So, Jessica, thank you so very much. What we have heard is that how she's getting together the current technology, working with educators, administrators, or the business leaders, a commitment to make the world a better place. And it is not about just getting it across, but the unique needs and challenges of the students and working towards solutions that deliver a measurable result. For her, it is about being collaborative. Here, we are not talking about the organization, but being collaborative at home, having an open conversation with children, and heading towards a direction that would be much better rather than we grappling for what next solution. It will happen. It will happen. That's life. But for us to put in those hand guards or guardrails makes life much more easier. Thank you so very much, Jessica, for your space and time. And this has been a beautiful learning experience.
Thank you, Thomas.